Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 16th, 2022 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DiLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left, I have Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who's our third member. We have Bob Brandt at the front table, who's our township solicitor, and Tommy Ryan at the back table, who is our township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
This evening's meeting is being video recorded for rebroadcast.
Thank you, Tommy. I have one informational item as well. For those who were at last month's meeting, you'll recall there was a little bit of a discussion regarding policies and procedures that we had kicked around a little bit at the end of the meeting. We had sort of pointed to Bob and asked him to sort of start taking a look at that for us and on our behalf. I just want to update to say that Bob is working on that. I don't have an official update tonight other than Bob expects to have something to us shortly that we can review on that particular item. But if anybody's here relative to that topic, wanted to offer the information. So no action from the board, just informationally that Bob will have something to us shortly that we can review. First item on our agenda tonight is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Okay. Seeing none, I will move forward to official action items. First item on our agenda is the consent agenda. First and foremost, I want to ask the board members if anybody wishes to make any specific exclusions or changes to the consent agenda. Okay. We had one item that I want to bring up as it pertains to the consent agenda, and that we got an email earlier this evening as it regarded the minutes and the meeting minutes. Residents here this evening, I want to talk about that for just a minute in terms of what does and doesn't go in the minutes and kind of how we record those particular items. And the question was raised ultimately by the residents saying, hey, I've looked at the draft minutes and I don't think that they reflect what I said. And I'm paraphrasing, and I apologize for not articulating exactly. At the end of the day, there's certain requirements we need to do with meeting minutes. And ultimately, most importantly, it's not an official transcript. It's not a deposition. We ultimately don't, we make a best effort. I'll ask Bob in a minute to kind of articulate a little more on this. But largely what we try to do is record what we're required to record in terms of when did we meet, where did we meet, who was here, if we had official voting items, then the board members who voted yes, nay, was there, just sort of documenting the, I'll call it the clinical pieces of what took place in the meeting. And Bob, maybe you can just a couple more words on why we don't sort of.
Well, no, I think you hit it. There's a section of the code that tells you written minutes shall be kept of all open meetings and shall include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of the members present, which would be you folks and others, the substance of all official actions, and a record by individual members of any vote taken. And then in terms of folks that have public comment, it requires the names of all citizens and the subject of their testimony. So that's what the minutes are required to do, and that's what has been the practice here.
Right, and I guess the one thing I would just ask, and just I'll ask you procedurally the best way to do it, is the residents here, I'm trying to dance around it. If he has a minor adjustment he wants to make, we certainly want entertainment. Should we do a move in a second and then he does that during the comment, or is that the right way to do that?
Right, yeah, if you want to make a slight change to the minutes, you can do that by a motion to amend the minutes as they were presented.
Right. Okay. So I don't know how to amend them specifically without talking. Does a resident have a concern about a word, or I don't want.
I don't know. I don't know what.
Exactly. So I'm just saying procedurally, do I do the motion in second and then have the resident come up?
Why'd I ask if there's I don't need that you need to do it one way or another. If residents here that asked about the minutes, or if anybody wants to ask about the minutes, have them come up. If there's a problem with the minutes, then we'll try to figure it out and make the motion then.
Okay,
It's been, I mean, the minutes that we vote on has been an ongoing problem. There's people in the room that have questioned it for years.
Yep.
And we said, hey, name, rank, and serial number. We had the previous solicitor look into it as far as what we had to put in the minutes. I think we're much better off now because of the tape recording. All the meetings are recorded.
Yep.
In years past, we had no official record except for what the manager put in it. Now, if there's a question about the transcripts, you can go back and actually look at the transcripts online, and if something needs to be corrected there. But I think the manager tries to do the best he can. I don't think he's trying to leave anything out in any way. But we do have official records, which are the actual minutes of the meeting that can be viewed.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
why don't you make, if someone wants to make a motion to adopt the minutes and then someone wants to ask a question about that, that's probably the easiest.
it's probably the easiest way to do that. Okay.
You know, in
I-
fairness, we could be here all night with minutes. That's the whole purpose of the way the code reads, is so it's not a transcript, and we're not going to, you know, change minute. You'll be, again, that's a,
Understood. I want to make sure that we recognize that somebody raised a question, but we also want to make sure that we just,
I think the
That's
right
fine.
thing to do is to make the motion and see if there's any public comment.
okay. So then if somebody would like to make a motion on the consent agenda, I will entertain that.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through, or 1 through 4, including the treasury report, the bill payments, the work session minutes, and the business meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that is on the floor? Jim?
Jim Alec Worcester. As you guys know, I was the biggest pain in the you-know-what when it came to minutes, forever.
Yes, sir.
I wanted them as accurate as possible. I wanted them as detailed as possible. Steve made the point, it's all moot now because you got a video recording of the meeting, gives you what was actually said. So all you do is put your general summary down for your, legal requirements for minutes, and then next to when you're finally done with whoever's comments, just say, see, videotape. And then you don't have to do anything except see videotape, because that was my biggest thing. You didn't have a videotape, and if I was misquoted, it's like, hey, guys, I could put my videos on YouTube and show you guys, whatever the problem was, but now that you're videotaping everything, that's the way to go. So I would just leave the minutes the way they are, and then say, see videotape, and this way people can go and just look and see what was said, so.
Thank you, Jim.
All right?
Appreciate that. Is there any additional? Joe? We'll come back to you, Jeremy. I got Joe over here.
I was the one that wrote the email. The only request that I had is I thought it was not what exactly I said, idea-wise. I sent an email, now that it's in writing. I sent it to all three of you and the township manager, so it's part of the record. I don't know when the videotape is in fact discarded or how long you keep it on record. So that's why the paper trail is very important. And as Mr. Mullock said, or Dr. Mullock said, whenever you're speaking, you want to make sure that it is as correct as possible. I'm not having a problem with what was said, I'm just correcting the record. So my email will stand as is, and that's it.
Thank you, Joe.
Tommy, to Joe's point, what is the time frame for the videos being able to be accessed, or the township keeps them?
Each January, with the reorganization meeting, the board passes the authorization to dispose of public records. On that list this January and for the past 2 or 3 Januaries has been the video recording. And that resolution states that the videos that predate October of the prior year will be deleted. So at minimum, they stay online for 90 days. And that's been the policy for the last 3 years.
I guess the question would be, it doesn't take a lot of room or storage space to hold the videos. Is that something that would be beneficial for meetings for, instead of doing it for 1 year, for maybe 3 to 5?
That's a decision for the board. We do pay for storage.
That's something that, I think Joe brought a good point up. How long are they available for? Something may come up, especially now when you go through decisions regarding building projects and larger projects before the township board. Well, time flies, and 1 year turns into 2, and 2 years turns into 5. So maybe we can look at that, the length of time that we hold the minutes for.
Okay. So Jeremy had a question, and Maeve, I'll take them in that order if that's okay. Or a comment, I should say.
Good evening. I don't have a question, but more of a comment, and it might be in regards, definitely in regards to the minutes. At least once in the past year, we've had minutes that, or recordings that were unable to be saved for technical whatever reasons.
Yep.
But we just referred to the recordings as being very important to be able to document what we're doing in these meetings. So my only comment is to consider, if we get in that situation again where minutes are lost and not saved, we probably do have to spend more time at that next meeting to make sure that residents' comments are properly captured in the minutes if there's no recording to support the minutes that are being kept. So if it's a very general statement in the minutes, we may have to amend those, and you as a supervisor may have to allow the time for the residents to speak their comments again, to capture them correctly in the minutes and have them documented in paper. Because if we lose them again, then we need a better way of documenting what residents are saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Maeve?
Mae Vogan, Del Road. My comment are there rules to how long you have to keep it? Or is it just up to the township supervisors? So like at my office, we have a standard that we keep X for so many years.
So there are standards on certain records. The video, we're not required to video record at all. Like that's a choice that this board made a couple of years ago to do that. You know, it'd been something talked about for, I think, over a decade. But,
Yes.
you know, so there's no today guiding principle that says, hey, video needs to be maintained for 5 years or 3 years. That would be just a board choice in terms of what made the most sense.
Okay. When you delete them from online, do you delete them totally?
The answer would be yes, we do. When it comes time to disposal, we remove them.
Okay.
So we might need,
I think that needs to be something.
okay.
I know you agree with.
Building project, it's something you don't think about until, Joe brought it up, and, until someone brings it up.
Sure.
You don't address those situations, so thank you.
Okay, is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor, which is adopting the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. I'm going to turn this over to Bob in just a minute, but it's going to be a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend the Township Code to include a special needs camp/developmental center use and provide use regulations. So, Bob, I'm going to hand it to you to sort of do the mechanics here.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that there's a public hearing on the ordinance which Rick described as proposed ordinance 2022-288. We have a court reporter present, so the court reporter will be taking the record, and there'll be an opportunity for anyone to comment at the public hearing. But I'm going to first make some exhibits as part of the record. The legal ad was sent to the Times-Herald on 12/10/21. The ordinance was sent to Montgomery County Planning Commission on 12/10/21 and to the Montgomery County Law Library on that date, in addition to the Worcester Township Planning Commission. The ordinance was placed in the lobby, posted on the website on the same date, The legal ad was, first legal ad was published on the 31st, January 31st, 2022. The second was published on February 7th, 2022. And tonight is the public hearing. The ordinance basically amends a definition to include the term special needs camp, school/development center. And that definition is any premises operated for profit or not-for-profit that provides educational, vocational, recreational, social, cultural, health, or like services, or programs primarily for persons with intellectual, physical, and/or developmental disabilities. An intellectual disability is a disability characterized by varying limitations in both intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior, impacting one or more social or practical ability, and a developmental disability is a disability characterized by impaired physical or cognitive functioning, impacting one or more physical, learning, language, or behavioral abilities. This is a text amendment that would apply to the AGR district with that definition, and it provides certain standards in which that would be a permitted use in the AGR district, one of which is 60 acres or more on at least 2 public roads. The second section indicates what may be included in that use, which would include, and I'm summarizing because the ordinance is published, classrooms, workspace offices, cafeterias, et cetera, outdoor recreational facilities, facilities for the operation of day and overnight camps, offices, et cetera, cafeterias, dormitories, cabins, agriculture, a restaurant and cafe that's open for public dining with a maximum indoor capacity of 40 persons, and then, of course, residential units for employees and clients of the special needs camp. So that's what the ordinance would do. There are at least, although this would certainly apply to the Variety Club because that was initiated by the Variety Club, there would be at least 5 other tracts in Worcester Township that this would apply to if adopted. So it's not particularly just for this property. It does apply, although this property was the impetus for the ordinance. So that's a summary of the ordinance. I'd ask the manager if he has anything to add to my eloquent explanation. See? Okay. Is there anybody that would like to make a comment? I see there's someone from the Variety Club here, or several folks would. I'd appreciate maybe somebody be sworn in and maybe make a statement briefly.
I do. Should I sign in here?
Please. And then for the court reporter, your full name and spell it if he needs it.
My name is Joseph Padula. I'm a resident here in Worcester Township, and I also happen to be on the board of Variety Club.
Okay.
Padula, P-A-D-U-L-A. Yes. And I'm here this evening to support this ordinance and what the Variety Club does. As I said, I'm a board member of the Variety Club. I'm on the investment committee and as well the farm committee. And being in this township, I know that they're a great neighbor and this ordinance is the right thing for them. So I hope that this evening we can pass it.
Okay, Joe, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a couple questions for you, Bob, just more maybe the mechanics to make sure that, and then I'll let either one of my counterparts speak as well. So my understanding, rolling back the clock, Steve, you talked about time. It was February of 2019, believe it or not, where the Variety Club came and gave us a presentation that sort of outlined what some of their goals and aspirations were in the coming year and decade. And one of the things that they talked about at the time, and we talked about at the time, was that they were a non-conforming use. That was really sort of the impetus in a lot of what they were trying to do was to be conforming versus non-conforming. And I'm going to say how I think I understand it, and I'm just going to ask you to make sure I'm sort of saying it adequately. So there was a period of time, they predate the ordinance. So when the original zoning ordinance for that area was passed, they didn't quite fit into that, so you get defined as a non-conforming use that in essence says what you're doing now is okay because you predate the ordinance, but you then sort of put some restrictions almost unintended because you're now non-conforming when you try to operate the camp.
Right, and I think it's an easier way for the Variety Club to operate because if they would go out for funding, for a funding source for a project, the way the ordinance is written doesn't really give them comfort in terms of being able to get funding because the use has been non-conforming. You would now be making the use conforming to the ordinance and permitted subject to those conditions, and I think it would make it easier for the Variety Club to operate that way. At least we had an initial meeting back in February of 2019 with them, and I know they made a presentation to the Board of Supervisors about that same time. So that's, from a zoning standpoint, this makes the use fit, and it also fits on other properties. So it's not what some people would call spot zoning at all. In fact, we should make the Montgomery County Planning Commission letter part of the record, but that Montgomery County reviewed it, but doesn't call it spot zoning. So I think, you know, my opinion, it's in good shape to be adopted this evening. Let me see if there's anybody else. This gentleman testified. Because it's a public hearing, I try to do this orderly. Right side of the room, if anybody would like to testify, please raise their hand. Left side of the room, anybody would like to testify, please raise their hand. Let the record indicate there's nobody that has any public comment. And if the board has any questions, address them to either me or them, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then you can consider the application.
Okay.
The
So Steve, you got any
Yeah,
questions?
I guess the first question would be, has there been any opposition from any of the neighbors? Any comments, public comments
No,
that any of the boards have received
No.
from any of the neighbors?
no.
I know in the past, I'm going back maybe 15 years when some of these things first come up, there were some questions about the use of the property, but no interaction with the neighbors at all.
No, and it's been advertised in accordance, as I outlined at the exhibits, it's been advertised in every fashion possible.
I believe, is it Horseshoe Drive, the road in front of it, it backs up to the back of it? Some of the neighbors that bordered the back were the hoop barn, up the barn back there. I should know the name of it, was the hoop house back there. They were concerned with the noise and problems like that and kids coming onto the property there, but there's been no conversation with that. Maybe the people moved that were there, but
We've heard nothing.
that was a concern. Okay, thank you. And I guess the second thing is, from my previous experience working with it, the deed is very restrictive in that the person that gave the property or donated it almost a century ago to the Variety Club, and it was pretty much specified, this is what it's used for, and you can't change that. I know we looked at that probably 15 years ago.
Right.
To make some changes in that, but it's really deed restricted, and they're limited in that scope of what they can do with the property. So you can't do much with it except really have a camp there for handicapped children. So it's a use that it's good for the community, it's good for the county and the area, and it's well received by the people in the area coming up to the camp.
Any other comment from board members?
No, I think it's a great organization. I think what we're doing is just cleaning up the zoning to help them with their definition, or so they could get funding, apparently, so it's a good thing.
All the exhibits are part of the record. Thank you, Lou. We can close the public hearing, so the public hearing is now closed. And now for your consideration is the consideration of ordinance 2022-288. It would require a motion to amend the township code to include a special needs camp / developmental center use and provide use regulations. That would be a motion to be made.
Okay. Does anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2022-288, an ordinance to amend the township code to include a special needs camp development center use and provide the use regulations.
And I'm very happy to second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you for coming. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like, but you can also make your exit as well. Tom, you don't get to leave because
No, we have another scintillating hearing for him to have. Give him a moment to,
yeah,
thank you all. Good night.
take care. good. Okay, so next item on our agenda is another public hearing. This one's going to be a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend the Township Code to establish a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit at Reiner Road and Spring Hill Road.
Thank you. Again, we're going to open a public hearing on the ordinance 2022-289, as Rick described, to establish a speed limit at Reiner Road and Spring Hill Road. For the record, the ordinance was submitted to Montgomery County Law Library on February 2nd, 2022. Notice was placed on the website on February 3rd, 22. Also placed in the lobby. On February 4th, the legal ad was published, and the hearing is right now this evening to consider that ordinance. We'll open the public hearing, and the ordinance very simply establishes a speed limit on Reiner Road of 30 miles per hour for its entirety, and secondly, establishes a speed limit of 30 miles per hour on Spring Hill Road for its entirety. That is it for the ordinance. Is there anybody that has any public comment on the ordinance during the public hearing? Let the record indicate that no one has any comment. Board members have any comment, or leave anything out? Once again, eloquent.
I guess my first question would be, what brought this up?
The residents of the Stables subdivision asked about enforcement with regards to speeders, and the roads are currently not posted. Where a road is not posted, state law defaults the speed limit to 55 miles an hour. So the process to establish a speed limit on the road is to conduct a speed study. The township did that, established the 85th percentile for each of the two roads. The 85th percentile determines the speed limit. The speed limit here at 30 miles an hour is what the 85th percentile allows. And with that, the road will be posted, and that will permit the Pennsylvania State Police to enforce the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit.
So without this posting, people can go 55 miles an hour in that cul-de-sac?
Yes, unless you do the study that we did, yeah.
Okay.
That's state law.
I wasn't quite sure where the road, I had to go out and do my drive-through to look at the neighborhood and see the problems, which caused me to go on other roads. And there's a lot of these developments aren't posted with signs. So I guess it takes the neighbors to start that, to have the state police go out there and then enforce the code. And I guess I'm a little surprised by looking at the development. I wouldn't think there's a lot of drive-through traffic in there. It's really a closed loop.
Correct.
And I would have to think 99.9999% of the traffic in there is generated by the neighbors in that neighborhood.
We had the same issue in our development. It's closed in the same way. There's no cut through, but, and it went through the similar iterations, and at the end of the day, we didn't do a speed study. We didn't do that particular step, and then we've just tried to self-manage it as a community. And it's surprising how fast that you can go on those roads, and the neighborhood is the problem in essence. But this was something they felt was necessary for them as an HOA to enforce certain things they were trying to enforce. And that was a step they felt was important to take. So I don't have any specific questions past that. I mean, I know we followed, crossed the Ts and dotted the Is on the speed study, and now have all the data that support 30 miles per hour. So in that regard, it's more just a matter of us passing.
So, Mr. Ryan, this is, many times in the development, nobody wants a sign in their front yard. So I guess the question is, I see at the intersection, so is it posted there at the intersection?
The law requires the first posting to be within 200 feet of the intersection of Spring Hill and Trooper. Thereafter, at intervals not less than 1/2 of a mile. So we've told the HOA that we will have to post a certain number of signs in there. They'll work with their members to make sure that the residents understand that some of these signs are going to be posted along the road.
So are we going to go with one single posting as they just pull into development to start with?
One posting would be required on the right-hand side of
Right.
the road. So, yes, one.
So,
And then, again, after that, at intervals not less than 1/2 of a mile.
do we have to put that second one? I guess I'm just asking.
We have to,
We have to put put the first one, and the second one has to go in.
yes.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Any other comments from the board members?
No, sir.
Not, we'll close the public hearing. Public hearing's closed, the exhibits are part of the record. It's appropriate for the board then to consider adopting ordinance 2022-289 to amend the township code to establish a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit at Reiner Road and Spring Hill Roads. That needs to be a motion.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-289, an ordinance to amend the township code to establish a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit at Reiner Road and Spring Hill Road.
And I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next item is Resolution 2022-09. This is going to be a resolution to authorize submission of a grant application to the Commonwealth Financing Authority statewide local share assessment program. Ooh, that's a mouthful. For a stake body truck. Tommy, can we get some more information on this?
The township is looking to purchase a truck and a stake body trailer. It will provide service to our compost site. The Commonwealth Financing Authority has monies through this program that it makes available to municipalities that have projects to improve quality of life issues. And the total purchase price of the equipment is approximately $200,000, and we're seeking a grant for $125,000.
Thank you, Tommy. In terms of this particular, do we have any past experience with this particular grant program?
I don't know of any.
Okay. So at the end of the day, we'll submit the grant. If we get the money, then we cover more than half the cost of the new purchase price, and if not, are we prepared to sort of handle the whole purchase if we need to? Is that part of our budget this year? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess, once again, it's nice to buy something, but is the need really there? I guess we'll ask Mr. Ryan that question, that, you know, we have to spend, we're getting 125, maybe to spend 125, so there's no problem doing that. Will the truck be utilized quite a bit, Mr. Ryan?
It will. If we do not receive the grant funding, it will be included in the draft 2023 budget.
Okay.
Just don't tell the grant people that.
So it's really a necessary item that we need, but we're just piggybacking on the loan at this time to try to help, I guess, using other people's money. So, okay.
Lou, any questions, comments?
We need a truck, we get a truck, it sounds like a deal. We're getting 125,000, so.
Okay. And I'll entertain a motion if someone wants to make that.
Make a motion to, approve a resolution 2022-09 to authorize submission of a grant application to Commonwealth Financing Authority statewide local share assessment, well, that's a lot, program for a stake body truck.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is a motion to adopt a stormwater easement at Wentz Church Road.
There's a proposed easement between the Yacovettis and the township with regard to the property at 2021 Wentz Church Road. The grantee has requested an 800-square-foot permanent drainage and stormwater easement on the property, and the easement has been drafted in order to grant that easement. It's a standard easement agreement requiring restoration when work's performed in the easement area, requires a maintenance obligation, and there's restrictions on the grantor's use that they wouldn't do anything to interfere with the easement that they're granting to the grantee. So again, the grantee is Worcester Township, and the grantors are the Yacovettis, John and Lizanne. That was a discussion that's had at previous board meeting, and I think Tommy's worked out the details of the easement, and we drafted it and it's appropriate for you folks to make a motion to authorize execution of it.
Okay. Any questions? Steve, Lou?
Don't believe we do, but we've,
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then if someone will make a motion on that item?
I'll make a motion to accept the stormwater easement at Wentz Church Road.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Maeve?
Mae Vogan, Del Road, thank you for doing this. You know, when he came to the meeting that day, he was really upset, Mr. Accavetti. And I think making it right goes a long way. Goes a long way, at least in my opinion. So thank you.
Dave, sign.
We already signed once.
Oh, okay, just put 2 then.
Another checkbox?
Gotta have fun with this, right?
There you go.
Thank you, Maeve. Is there any additional public comment? Jeremy?
Jeremy Quinn, Worcester Township. I'd like to say thank you also. It's the right thing to do for the resident. I don't understand all of the details of what the easement involves, but it sounds like to me that you're doing the right thing to fix this problem. I'm not asking for an answer now, but I'm curious to know what was found out about this project that happened that nobody knew about, but that's above and beyond my additional comments I'm going to make now, because I do think it's the right thing to do. And last month, Steve tried to do the right thing also by paying a fine for a citizen so that the, what did you call it, Steve? Animosity wouldn't come back to the meetings anymore. So it's great that we see supervisors stepping up to help our residents, because in the latest newsletter, it says, Worcester Township helps preserve and improve the quality of life for residents and businesses within the community, and goes on and on about why permits are needed to ensure the work done meets the approved plans. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, right? It's great that you're helping some residents, you're doing the right thing. It's great that you want to step up and pay a fine for another resident. I've been coming here for a year now, dealing with the same problem for 2 years, with a problem on Windy Hill Road that specifically contradicts what's said in this recent newsletter about how helps preserve and improve the quality of life for residents, and how work done meets the approved plans. But nobody wants to help the 4 residents on Windy Hill Road being affected by this. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Jim?
Jim Malik, Worcester. I'm not signing twice. I don't know where that's coming from. Agreed with everybody. Did the right thing to do. I mean, problem solved. Happy resident, okay? I'm just going to contrast the way you handled that public comment versus the school district and how they handled the comment. You know, the way the Sunshine Law is set up and the way your policy's set up for comment, the comments are restricted to the item that it's on the agenda, okay? So theoretically, you never should have let him keep going about stuff that wasn't about the item on the agenda. The school district, and the reason I'm sensitive to that is that's how the school district does it. If you don't talk about that specific item the whole time, they cut you off. So I'm just here to say, you know, and I've gotten in trouble for complimenting the board. Don't ask me why. But I'm here to say, nice job letting him speak about stuff that he feels is related to the item and everything else. So, I mean, that's the way it should be. And it seems to me you guys are very responsive to everybody. And it's like a change. So not a real change, but it's nice to see. So I just appreciate that.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any additional public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next item is also another motion, and this is going to be a motion to certify qualified volunteers for the Act 172 Earned Income Tax Credit for 2021. And my understanding is there were a couple of additions. Tommy, is that correct?
Since our last meeting, we received the names of 2 additional qualified volunteers.
Gotcha. So we just need to have a motion so that they can apply for this tax credit that we've had on the books for the last few years, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Does anybody have any questions pertaining to this? This is similar to last year. We're just adding some additional individuals who qualified.
I'm good. Steve?
Okay. If you want to make a motion then?
Motion to approve or certify qualified volunteers for the Act 172 Earned Income Tax Credit for the 2021 year.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up is other business. Does anybody have any other business that they wish to bring before the board tonight?
Just, I guess, something we talked about before regarding open space within the township. It's something we've kicked around about having a fund, and, you know, Stacy was working on properties to acquire and somehow to come up with a way to get funds from the people in the township that want to contribute funds to do that. And I think also that, you know, we've kicked around before this earned income tax item, that it's something that it's tough right now with the economy, with people, but I know other townships are looking at it. Some of our neighboring townships looking at it. I think it's a conversation that maybe you want to initiate
Sure.
again.
So do we want to put that on a work session? That sounds like a work session topic. Do we have any specific work session items the next couple of months, Tommy, that we're committed to? No. So that might be a good thing to put back on, to have a discussion on it for one of them. I think that's fine, you know, to have that discussion by all means. And then, Lou, did you have something? You had mentioned the you had mentioned the Kriebel Mill Road conversation we had that started last year, and then it kind of stopped, and potentially putting that on a work session in a coming month as well, just as part of a conversation that we've had.
I once again open the conversation there about that, either a road or just put up some kind of bike path, something there. It's stupid not to be able to connect the township. And, you know, I think it'd be nice if we could name the bridge after somebody.
Naming rights.
Naming rights, thank
Naming
you.
rights, we're still, I think we floated the idea for Bert last month. I don't know how excited he was about the naming rights opportunity, but maybe he'll be more excited on this one if we can incent that better. But, so that also, I think, would be a work session topic, if we could line that up as well over the next couple of months.
I think we should have a discussion on the Kriebel Mill Road Bridge, yes. So however you want to identify it, yes.
The Lou Betts Memorial,
No,
The bridge over the River Kwai, that's,
no,
I
the
mean,
bridge over the River Kwai, that was Jim Molly.
we've been discussing that for 20 years probably.
I mention it as a work session because those are opportunities for us to have more informal discussion without having to have a voting when we put stuff in the business meeting. That's a good place for us to have that discussion and get thoughts around that again. I think they're both fine. I'm on board with both of them.
Yeah, it's not a friendly bridge at all. I mean, I went down there a couple different times, and I was really questioning traversing it, and just, I don't want to end up down the creek. You know, it goes like this, but find out some prices of doing some kind of fix to it where it could be used by the people in the township. If not for a road, definitely for some kind of other vehicles, bicycles, walkers.
Right. I mean, we started that conversation, and I think we made some headway, and then like a lot of times, you know, there's other things that pop up that take precedence, and now we can just circle them back into our dialogue. So I think they're both fine for that purpose. Any other business, or are we good?
That was it?
Okay. Next item is public comment. We do, again, like at the beginning, we do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any additional public comment for the board tonight? Bert?
Bert Hines, Worcester. I have a few things tonight. I want to begin by saying thank you to Steve for bringing up the idea of a referendum for an open space funding source. I did want to bring that up tonight. You were reading my mind, and I appreciate and applaud you for that. We've talked in the past that the ideal time to have a referendum would be during either a presidential election year or a gubernatorial election year because of the voter turnout. And here we are in a gubernatorial year, so we should have a very good turnout this coming November. And last spring I was here, in fact I was here 2 years ago talking about this, but last spring I talked about it, and I talked about the surrounding townships and Lower Salford, or Skippack Township already having a funding source, as well as several other townships. I'm here to tell you, and I think Steve may have been referencing this, Whitpain Township is now putting that out as a referendum this coming November. So we'll have Skippack Township on the one side, Whitpain on the other, looking at an open space referendum. And I'd hate to see us fall behind our neighbors. When there are opportunities, I'd like to see that. I think what you've done along the way and the fact that you've been listening, I think that's greatly appreciated. The idea of people voluntarily contributing, I think that's great, but I don't think it's going to yield the amount of money that you're going to need when opportunities do arise. So again, I won't say any more about that. I just want to commend you on that. The other thing I talked about last month was the Valley Forge Road widening. And I asked about it, and Tommy said, well, it's on the website. And I couldn't find it on the website. So the next day I contacted Tommy, and he said, we have to look under corridor. That never occurred to me, but I did. And true to his word, everything was there. And I would encourage everyone in the township to take a look at the Valley Forge Road corridor. It doesn't even say Valley Forge Road on there, but this corridor and the plans for the widening of Valley Forge Road. I'm not an engineer, so looking at the plans, I don't know all the notations and things, but one thing I could understand, I saw a number of things that I liked. Clearly, there's been a lot of thought and a lot of planning put into this. There's an old tree on the corner of Stump Hall and Valley Forge Road, and in their wisdom, they have maintained that tree. So I thought, okay, somebody's really working hard on this. But as I looked closer at it, when I came down Valley Forge Road to the Natural Lands Trust, the DeLauro Preserve property, almost every tree on the front of the DeLauro property or Natural Lands Trust gets wiped out. Those trees were planted there, I'm guessing 30 years ago. I remember when the fields came right up to the road, and then they planted the trees there. But what I'm asking you to do tonight is to go back and look at the plan. I don't think it's necessary to take out all of those trees, to replace them with an asphalt paved walking path or biking path or whatever kind of path it's going to be. Because, and this might be my lack of familiarity with all the details, because that's the Natural Lands Trust property, why can't that path be moved back another 10 or 15 feet, further back even from Valley Forge Road, and let all the trees along that property that are not old trees, it's a series of maple trees and they grow slowly and it takes a while till they're just starting to really look nice. And this plan calls for almost every one of them to be annihilated. So I'm asking someone to take a look at the plan, go back and just question whoever's drawing the plans up about why don't you just move the path over? You're not infringing on anyone's front lawns. It's the Natural Lands Trust. And it just seemed ironic that we talk about, the sign says DeLauro Preserve, and the first thing that they're going to do when they go to widen the road is knock out all the things that some of us are trying to preserve in the township. So something to consider. The other one that I looked at, and I would be upset if I were them probably, is the Gregory property. It used to be Art Anders' farm before any development occurred. And when Anders had a farm there, you used to go down Valley Forge Road, and you didn't turn into their driveway. their driveway just kind of slithered parallel to their front porch. And the Gregory folks have changed it so that you pull into the driveway. They've planted all sorts of vegetation, trees, shrubbery
Bert,
out there.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up if I
Got
can.
it.
I got you.
Okay,
I'm
just take a look at this. That's all I'm asking.
understood.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments on that, Bert. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Jim?
As Jim's coming up, make a comment based on Bert's comment. Rick has really as chairman, he's been communicating and watching other townships. It's something that never really died. It's something we didn't move on. And as you remember, we said it was really a bad time. If we do something, it'd be during a presidential election where a lot of people come out. And Rick has really been spearheading that and looking into it. So Rick had sent something out, I saw it, and I'm just following up on Rick's comment. So just let you know that it's not something that we totally forgot about. We just put it on the back burner. Now with this is coming up, now's the time to relook at the situation, Bert. So, thank you.
Jim?
Am I good? Jim Malik, Worcester. Just commenting on the referendum. I'm still waiting for an inventory. There's no sense in doing a referendum if you don't have property we can buy. I'll give you a couple examples of property we cannot buy. Steve's Farm, over 100 acres. There's no way we can afford to buy that property. Carol Allen's property, over 100 acres. We cannot afford to buy that property. So how many properties are left that we could actually purchase if we go through with a referendum? So somebody come up with an inventory. And if there's none, then talking about a referendum is a waste of time. Timing for a referendum at this election, is not good. Inflation's at like freaking 9%. You know, we're almost in a recession. We're coming out of a pandemic, and you're going to go tax people? No, not a good idea. Now, a couple years from now, when we get the presidential election, you'll have a huge cross-section of people, and hopefully we're out of all this other ridiculous stuff going on. But, you know, people are paying $5 a gallon for gas, and you want to go tax them for open space? Not smart. I mean, politically as well. And I understand we have multiple large projects that we need to do in the township, like bridges, culverts, you know, and the roads are like $1 million a year. So before you start spending money on open space, you got to find out what the forecast is for new bridges, because I think a new bridge is like $2 million a pop. I don't know. Is that right, Tommy, or no? Higher? How much? 4? Yeah. So you do 3 bridges, it's $12 million. I mean, so, you know, before we start talking about referendum, I'm not saying I'm against it, but right now, bad timing, and you got to do your homework as to, you know, we got $12 million worth of bridges to build. You know, it's not going to fly. So the other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, the leniency you have with the time limit. You know, we go to a school board meeting, as soon as that clock hits 4 minutes, they cut you off. They don't even let you finish your sentence. So, you know, I appreciate the way you guys are dedicated to transparency and listening to people. Just keep it up. Thanks.
Jim, just a comment on the referendum. Once again, we tabled it before, and not to keep kicking the can down the road, but at some point you sit there, let's look at it, bite the bullet, and just see what we can do. So it's a process. It's not an easy process. Other townships have worked on it for a long time. I know that from being on the farm board. We're in communication with townships that are doing this to try to preserve properties. So it's not something we can just put on the ballot in 6 months. It takes a while to get this done, but
I get it.
we have a goal. It's just something, and once again, as you said, it's a referendum that the residents vote on. So if the residents are in favor of it, we go with it. The residents aren't in favor of it, it doesn't fly.
Well,
so it's not, we're not saying we're going to tax the people in the township at a certain rate.
And what I'm saying about the referendum is if you got no properties that you can afford to buy the open space rights to, what are you doing? Going to do a referendum and you can't buy properties? You need to know what properties you have out there.
You know,
that you can purchase, and how
once again,
much?
through the referendum, you may not, you get the money this year, and you get money next year, it's a building, becomes an account you can build on. So when a property comes up that you want, the money's there in reserves.
What I'm saying to you, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. If there's no properties that come up that fit our budgetary constraints, why tax residents for money you're never going to use?
I mean, the past couple of years in the county, we've only had 4 or 5 properties come up for preservation through the farm, for any township in the county. My board meeting the other day, we had 21 properties apply for it. So there weren't any in this township, but once again, if we have the resolution or we move forward with the vote and just see what happens. That being said, you asked about inventory. We are working on that. Mr. Ryan,
Okay,
once again, so we're compiling a list of the properties that the township thinks would fit into that mold.
and the other thing, if you decide to go down that road, you don't hire some biased team to put it together for you like you did last time. Guy was self-admittedly biased, remember? The guy you hired?
Right.
So you want
We
somebody.
didn't hire him, to be
Well,
clear, but I understand what you're
well,
saying. He made a
he did-
presentation for us.
Yeah, he made a presentation.
Yep.
And at least he was honest enough to admit he was biased.
Yep.
So you want somebody who's independent.
Mr. Malik has already been done in-house already
Oh, no, I get,
with the staff we have,
all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional public comment for the board? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.